Hi, Deborah. Thank you so much for coming in to see me today.
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate you taking my request.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you. I just, before we started, thank you so much for filling out the forms that I sent you. And you got a chance to read over them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you have any questions about anything on the forms?
I think I filled out something wrong in terms of the relationship part,
Okay.
but I don't think it's really, I didn't put down any satisfaction level there, so.
Okay.
Because I'm not in a relationship right now.
Yeah, understandable.
Okay.
Some of those forms, yeah, there can be kind of up to how you want to interpret it.
And also the school part. I didn't know to list my undergraduate studies, so everything I put down about school was about my graduate studies. So
Okay.
if we need to change that and I need to do another form, you'll let me know.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay.
And I think we're gonna talk a bit about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna get to know you kind of in this session, so
Okay.
if I can get clarifications on anything if I
right.
need them. But first, I just wanted to go over the consent form
Okay.
that you signed. Did you have any questions about
No,
the
it was
consent?
pretty clear. The consent
Okay.
form was pretty easy to understand.
Okay, great. I just wanted to take a minute to point out a couple of things, just with regards to confidentiality. So what you tell me in the counseling session will be confidential.
Okay.
However, there are a few caveats to that. The first one being that I am a counseling student,
Mm-hmm.
so I am under supervision, and so I will be sharing some of what you share with me with my supervisor
Mm-hmm.
in order to get her feedback, and it's really just so that I can be the best counselor for you and offer you the best service that I can
Okay.
with her help. So that's one of the caveats to confidentiality, but it won't go outside of the counseling center.
Okay.
Your information, it'll just be between me and her. And then the other caveats to confidentiality are if you share anything with me about child abuse or elder abuse, I do have to report that
Okay.
legally. Also, if you share anything about suicidal thoughts or suicidal ideation, then I will have to report that as well and get you the help that you need, as well as with if I hear about anything about causing harm to someone,
Okay.
causing harm or death to another person,
Okay.
I'll have to report that, as well as if anything is like subpoenaed, any of your notes or stuff from your diagnosis, your counseling session notes, if those are subpoenaed by the court, I do have to
I
give those to the
understand.
court. But other than that, things are confidential.
Okay.
Confidential. So thank you so much. So that is our confidential forms.
Okay. All
All
right.
clear. Okay. So, yeah. Deborah, could you tell me a little bit more about you? You are from Chicago?
Yes, ma'am. I am from Chicago.
Did you grow up here?
I grew up here. I was born here. I was raised and live now, even currently, on the west side of Chicago all my life. My family is from one of the western suburbs. My maternal grandmother came through Kansas, and my paternal grandparents came through Missouri. But my mom was born here in Chicago, and I was born here in Chicago, and my brothers and sisters were all from Chicago. I have two brothers and two sisters. I'm sort of the middle child. I'm the second oldest girl. I have a younger sister under me and two brothers younger than I am.
Okay.
I also have two children. I have twins, a boy and a girl. They are 41 years old. I have 11 grandchildren and one great-granddaughter.
Oh,
Yes.
big family.
Yeah.
Are you close to your family?
Very close. We're a very close family. We spend a lot of holidays together. We do a lot of things together, just impromptu, decide to get together for barbecues and go bowling and different things like that. Yeah, we spend a pretty good amount of time together. I take care of my mom, as I indicated. And so
Yeah.
my family likes to come. She's the matriarch.
Okay.
So they like to come and spend time with her when they can.
Okay. That's great. Speaking of your mom, you mentioned that she's one of the main reasons that you're coming in for counseling.
Yes.
Is dealing with her. You're taking care of her. She has a lot of
her dementia.
And yeah, she's just getting older.
Yes.
And thinking about her dying and moving on. And can you talk a little bit more about that? Like why you're wanting to come to counseling?
Well, it's we're, as a Christian, we're all taught, that we're born once and then we die. And we're all going to go. That's not an appointment that we can avoid. But my mom got sick suddenly. She was independent and taking care of herself until about 9 years ago, and she fell and she hit her head. And then after that, she was kind of unbalanced, and she went to the doctor, and she ended up being in the hospital for like 97 days in the hospital and in rehab for a total of 97 days. And immediately upon her admission to the hospital, the doctor said she would not be able to live on her own. And as a family, I sat down with my brother and my two sisters. I have one brother who he's just now starting to spend more time with the family, but he had isolated himself away from us for a while. And I was very angry about that, about the way he was treating our mother. And I got past that. God helped me through that. And I had to let that go and be forgiving and try to understand where he was in that. But we sat down and talked about it. And because I was living in my house on my own, my husband and our marriage was kind of coming apart at that point. We had separated a few years before that. And then we tried to pull it back together again, but it wasn't working, and I knew he was going to be leaving soon, so my house was pretty much mine. And it was perfect for my mom, the way it's arranged, so we could set up a room for her. So it was decided that she would come and live with me. At the time, I was working. I'm retired now, but I was working then, so I got a caregiver and started to schedule my life around her life. And I'm still scheduling my life around her life, and it's been kind of hard. It's been stressful because I can't do things spontaneously. I can't, my girlfriends can't call and say, what are you doing tonight? And let's get together and go to the movies, or let's go out and have dinner. I always have to schedule everything in my life around having someone to care for her. And I love my mom, and I love being able to care for her. I really count it as a privilege to be able to give back to her in this way, because a lot of people lose their parents suddenly and they don't get to give back like that. So I have enjoyed it, but at the same time, it also has, it caused stress because the dementia is progressing. And when she first came, we could do a lot of things together. I mean, we could go to the show. She and I could go to the show. We watched a lot of movies. We played board games and things together. But as the disease progresses, she does less and less, and she's getting older and older. So she's been with me, it'll be 9 years in July. And I think that the hardest thing for me was when she didn't recognize me. One day, I came down as usual to fix her breakfast on a weekend, and she says, "Oh, hello, and who are you?" And she's pleasant enough. She's extremely pleasant and so grateful for everything. So she's not hard to care for. It just seems like here I am retired, and I should be having a little more freedom, being able to do some things, travel, go when I want to go. And it was my decision. I could have gone along with, let's put her in a nursing home, but all my family has died at home. And so I wanted her to, at least as long as I could, to keep her at home. And she's so comfortable, and it's been really good for her because she was close to dying when she went in the hospital. They didn't think she was going to make it. But we pray, and we trust God. And he told me, I don't know what he told my other brothers and sisters, but he told me in one of the all-night prayer sessions that we were having around her hospital bed, he said, "This is not unto death." And I believed him. And sure enough, she recovered. But the dementia was there. She recovered the physical illness that she suffered from the fall. But the dementia was there. It was the onset of it. The doctor said that she probably was already starting in the beginning stages of it, and the fall just sort of accelerated it. And when I think about it, she was. She was living on her own, but we were going every day to check on her, and we found that she wasn't eating. You know, we would bring her favorite foods and come back a day later, and she hadn't eaten it. And she was just sort of just drifting along, working her word search puzzles and smoking her cigarettes and drinking her coffee. And then I started noticing that she wasn't keeping herself up because my mom was always meticulous about how she dressed up. She came from the age where they put on their face to go to the grocery store. And so she was always made up. But she had chipped a tooth. She never said anything about it. She wasn't keeping her hair. You know, she just wasn't taking care of herself. So I believe it was started before that, but it accelerated. And I'm having a hard time, I think, not just because of her imminent passing, because I'm kind of prepared for that. As much as I don't want to come downstairs one day and she's not fogging the mirror, I know it's going to happen. If I keep her in my house long enough, and I'm determined as much as I can to keep her there until the end. But I think it started me to thinking about my own mortality and how I'm spending my late years. And it's given me, you know, sometimes it's kind of depressing. I'm happy in my school life. I'm happy in my church life. And I'm happy in my family life. But I feel like there was more that I wanted to do, that my life is on hold while I care for her. So that's basically it. And I just need some coping skills so that I don't become resentful of having to be her primary caregiver when I have a sister, two sisters, and two brothers that it's their mother too. And I love my younger sister, but she moved away to Texas. And prior to that, for 8 years of the 9 years that my mother's been here, she's been in school and been having knee replacement surgeries. So she was never available. And then as soon as all of that was over, knees healed, school done, she moved away. And I'm happy for her because she's really making a good life for herself there. Her daughter is there. I'm happy for them. But at the same time, I'm dealing with some resentment. And I don't want to have resentment to my sisters. I really don't. And it's hard. And then my older sister, she used to come a lot and spend time when my mom was more cognitively aware. But now she, you know, I mean, if I need to go to a conference for the church or I want to get away, I mean, it's really a lot of maneuvering, manipulating, trying to figure out who's going to stay with her this night, and I don't want to stay, and that futon's not comfortable down there, and I can't work your television. I mean, everybody's got an excuse. The one bright light is my younger brother comes every Sunday so that I can go to church because he knows that means a lot to me. So he's consistent. And my daughter will help out sometimes, and my son. But they have their families, and they're young, and they got to keep up with their teenage kids and stuff. So, and I try not to impose on my family, but it's, now especially at the point I'm at in school, I need more time for myself. I need more time to study. I think I'm in the most difficult part of the journey, the graduate journey, and I just feel like I need some coping skills to deal with it a little better.
That's understandable. It sounds like it's a lot that you're dealing with, and a lot of conflicting emotions as well. Feeling like, like a little bit resentful, but not wanting to be resentful, and also seeing the joy of having this time with your mother, but also the loss of other things that you might have.
My own time. My own time, and it's like I'm done with school. I'm home. I'm caring for her. I just have to fit all my assignments in and all my studies in around her. And like if I want to go to the library, I have to plan so someone can come and stay with her. Sometimes I just don't want to get up on Saturday morning and fix breakfast. I would love for one of my siblings to come over and say, we're going to fix breakfast for Mom. You just sleep in. But I have to get up and go with it. And sometimes it's a bit much. And like I said, I don't want to be resentful. This has been a joyous time. I need some help trying to maybe convince my family to come go with me to a support session for caregivers, maybe to, to some kind of way so that they can understand that I need some respect for myself. And I want to cope with it a little better. I want to cope with the resentment a little better.
Just going off of that a little bit, have you talked to your family about any of the things you're feeling or asking for more help? Or
Yes, I have, and they will help. And it starts off for a while, and it's good because in the beginning everybody promised, and everybody kind of came through. But like I say, as she has progressed and the disease has taken more of her, and she's less and less of the mother that we grew up with. She's further back in all she remembers. She's stuck in. She's like 7 years old, and she's stuck in what went on in her life when she was 7. And as it has progressed, people have moved further and further away. Like it was a lot. Everybody was there all the time. I mean, somebody was in and out all the time, every day, every weekend. Someone would call me and say, if you want to get out and do some grocery shopping or go get your hair done or get your nails done, I'm coming over and spend the afternoon with Mom. Because people could play board games with her, watch sports and stuff with her, sit out on the porch, barbecue. But as she's become less and less mobile and less aware, it's like they're always surprised. They come over and I didn't know she was doing this. And she talks about death a lot. And, she knows she's gone. And she's not in any pain. I thank God for that. She's on just medication for her eyes, just eye drops. And but nobody wants to spend time with her. And I have a feeling, and I could be wrong, and I haven't talked to them about this, but I have a feeling that when my siblings come around, they feel the same sort of angst about their end of life situation and who's going to care for them and who's, and all these different things, and I think that they don't like to be reminded. My oldest brother, the one who hasn't even seen her in the 9 years since she's been in my house, except for once before she got really bad, my youngest brother's daughter got married, my niece got married, and she went to the wedding. And that was the last time all her children were together with her. And so we have a picture of all of us on the table next to her, and she sees it every day at breakfast. And every day at breakfast she goes, are these my children? I mean, she doesn't even recognize when she's talking to me that I'm the one on the picture. I'm standing in front of her. And so my brother just says he doesn't want to see her like that. And when I was angry with him, I lashed out. And I told him, I said, do you think we want to see her like this? No. And I mean, I was hard on him. I mean, I lit into him and I made him cry. But it didn't change it. It didn't make him come and spend time with her. And that disappointed me tremendously. I mean, I feel like sometimes it's a lot, and a lot is expected of me. And then I'm very spiritual, so I reflect back onto whom much is given, much is required. And so I've had so much. God has given me healthy children. I've had a generally healthy life. I've had good jobs. I've stayed in my home 30 years. God has made a way. And so I feel like I'm being ungrateful. This is so real for me. I feel like I'm being ungrateful. Sometimes when I'm resentful, and I don't want to be, I don't want God to feel like I'm ungrateful because He has given me much. And so I try to suck it up and do what I'm supposed to do. But sometimes you get tired. You carry the load. So I just feel like I'm tired and I need some coping skills. I need some ideas, some kind of ways to convince my brothers and sisters that I need more help.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all that.
Thank you for
You're dealing with that. You're dealing with a lot right now, with school and family, and this is a huge situation with your mom, and it's a lot of responsibility. So it's very important, and it's a lot of responsibility on you. Yeah. So I hope that we can talk about this over the next couple of weeks, and come together and find some coping skills that are going to be helpful or have some create some goals that are going to help you to move forward with your family, your mom, just even be able to walk forward with gratefulness as you said that you wanted to. And so, yeah, there's stuff that we can work on together. I just wanted to go quickly. You've mentioned it a few times how your faith is really important to you, and you wrote it in your forum. And I'd love to hear more about that, about your journey, and about what it means to you now.
Well, I have such a checkerboard Christian history. I was raised in the Episcopal Church, which is the Anglican English Catholic Church, which is it mirrors the Catholic Church, other than in the beginning when the Catholics were doing their masses in Latin, the Anglican Church was doing it in English so we could understand it. I got a good foundation there. My mom took us to church. My aunt taught Sunday school. I was an acolyte. I actually used to serve on the altar, and I was baptized at 8 years old. I asked, and all my brothers and sisters were all baptized at the same time one Easter in our little plaid outfits. And then when I was 11, I took the confirmation. I took the catechism classes. I wanted to understand. I have always felt God moving in my life. Sometimes I wish He would move away, but He didn't. And, I used to be pretty devilish, but I always knew that God had things that He wanted me to do, so I couldn't stray too far away. And I was very involved in the church. I loved Sunday school. I did community things in the church and mission things, and went to summer camp with the church. And then I stayed in that church until I graduated high school. And when I went to college, I thought I didn't need church. Oh, God, we'll get back to you. I'm going to have fun because that's what. And then midterms came, and then I said, well, wait a minute, God, maybe I should rethink this. And so then I started going to chapel, and I went to a Catholic university. I went to Loyola. So I started going to church, and I realized that if I didn't do anything else, I had to prioritize God in my life. And everything else, He might be able to forgive me for some of the foolishness, but I needed to keep Him first. So I continued to be in church, and I graduated college in 74 and then got married in 76. And I married a man who was steeped in the Pentecostal church. Now, if you know anything about Protestant churches, they are not at all like Pentecostal churches. They're very ritualistic. We follow a format. I knew the Mass by heart. I still remember the Mass. I could do the Mass. If somebody called me, I could go right through it from the communion to the confession prayers. I know the Mass. So going to the Pentecostal church introduced me to the more spiritual side of church. I did not have a lot of spirituality. I felt the presence of God, but I felt like God was for certain times. It was for holidays, it was for Sundays, it was for, and we didn't do a lot of Bible reading in my house. We had prayer books, which is what the Episcopal Church and the Catholic Church use. Now, they're excerpts from the Bible, and they're verbatim excerpts, but you never are exposed to the fullness of God revealing Himself to you. Well, in the Pentecostal church, you are. So it was fascinating to me. So I got married, and I started going to the Pentecostal church, and because I was the only one in my family that was actually active in a church and had an active church membership, my grandma got a little sick. Her back was bothering her, and she called me. She attends the Presbyterian church. And she said, would you do my Sunday school class for me for a couple of weeks? They're the same age as your children, which was 3. She says, I've got all the supplies, and if you'll come and take my class for me, I'd really appreciate it, because you're the only one that's still got an active church life. So I'm like, sure. I went to Sunday school at 9:30 at the Presbyterian church, stayed for the service, because the Pentecostal churches, Their morning worships are usually around 11:30. The morning is almost gone. Noon, some of them. So we went to the Presbyterian church and spent the morning in Sunday school and singing the grand hymns and the anthems. And then we went to the Pentecostal church in the afternoon and we shouted to the glory of God and we sang gospel music and we danced and we just had a good time. And I started off with those first 3 weeks teaching that class and I never stopped. And so I ended up with a dual membership in the Presbyterian church and the Pentecostal church. I was ordained an elder in the Pentecostal church. I served faithfully in that church for 10 years. And if you know anything about Pentecostal church, Protestant churches, their ministers are not members of their churches. They're hired. They're employees. And so they're what they call itinerant. And so they got an itinerant minister in there, and he got sick. He was a good pastor, and he was a great administrator. He came in and he changed things in that church, but they didn't like the changes that he made because he opened the doors of the church to the community, and they were very elitist, and they had a great building, and they were always complaining that the community coming in, they would not respect the building. And so I felt like they were worshiping the building and not worshiping God. And they were good people, but when they fired that man when he was out sick, I said, these are not good people. And I voted against firing him. I said, at least let's come to him face to face and tell him. Let's don't just fire him while he's out. He was sick, he had diabetes, and he had one of his feet amputated. And they fired him then. And so he left and decided, because he had come from New York and he had been here 3 years, he started a non-denominational church, and I went with him. And we really, I grew spiritually. I enjoyed my time serving in the Presbyterian church. I learned a lot about church order and how to run church on a corporate level. But then he left, and we shared space in a United Methodist church. So the diabetes progressed, and he eventually died. And we were still having service in the United Methodist church. So I just blended right in there and stayed there because I liked the pastor. And I felt comfortable in the house. And I went to Lay Academy and became a lay speaker in the United Methodist Church, and I served faithfully there. And then she died, and we got another pastor, and then they decided to combine our two churches that were nearby, and they sold the building, and I stayed with the other church. And then that pastor, who was my teacher in Lay Academy, was sent to another church in Aurora, a United Methodist church. So he was so strong of an influence in my husband's life. By now, I'm on husband number 2. I got married to him when I was in the Presbyterian church. And he was such a strong influence on my husband that we followed his ministry there. And we worshiped there in a church in Aurora, which was predominantly Caucasian, very few African Americans. We brought a little swag to the church. And we stayed there until they moved him. And then I said I wanted to find a church closer to home. And so we started fellowshipping all around and just searching for a church home. We had been there 8 years. And my children were graduated, and I was running a print business and working in a bank, and just really enjoying life, going fishing, loving my husband, and his son got killed in drive-by. And he had a faith crisis. And in the faith crisis, he turned away from God. He felt like God didn't love him. And when you're angry with God, you take it out on the people that are closest to you. So he became very mean and bitter. And it seemed like nothing I could do was ever enough for him. He complained, he criticized, and this was so not him. So I knew it was the grief. And I knew it was the whole thing of his son dying. And I couldn't imagine what that felt like to lose a child. But he became so mean, and then he started a relationship with others. That sort of took it out of my hands. I couldn't fight that. So when he drifted away, it hurt. I tried to hold on, but I let it go. And then he came back. And in the meantime, the church that we were getting closest to, when he stopped going there, I pulled away. And in the middle of the whole thing coming out about his infidelity, I went to a church in my community. And those people embraced me and my pain without knowing me, without knowing what I was going through. And I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with them. And I had a church family. And I said, well, I just went that Sunday because my friend had invited me and said, you'll like that church and you can walk. It's walking distance. It's about 5 blocks. But on a good day, I can walk. And I had a bad car, which would break down. So it made it good that I could get to church without worrying about a car. And I went there, and I wasn't going to go because I was very, very bitter about it. It was the same week I found out about all these affairs and everything. So I was crushed. I'm like, God, what's going on here? But I remember that I had gone to the church that we were scoping out and thinking about joining, and we had fought on the way to church, and I hated that. And then instead of coming into church and trying to reconcile, or he leaves me at the door of the church and disappears. And so when it's altar call and time to pray, I go fly into the altar, and I just put it all out on the altar, and I say, God, I need a revelation, and I need it sooner rather than later. And that was Sunday, and then Thursday the revelation came, and I was like, really, God, this is what this is all about? And he said, well, you said you wanted to know sooner rather than later, so now you know, and so now how are we going to deal with this? And so I was very angry, but my friend, I had promised her I would finally go with her to the neighborhood church. So I said, okay, I'm going to go, and I'm going to sit in the back of the church like this, and and then when it's over, I'm up, I'm out of here. But the sermon was for me. The word was for me. And when it was time to pray, I went to the altar. And the pastor said something to me. He didn't know me. He didn't know where I was from. He didn't know what I was going through. But he said, daughter, you're in a lot of pain. And the Holy Spirit has told me that you must pray for your husband and that woman. And he moved on. And I'm like, wait a minute, come back here. Where did you get? Because nobody knew except him, his mother, and his sister. I hadn't even told my family because I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I felt like something was wrong with me because he decided to have an affair. That's when I went to counseling for my first time. I started counseling. But I went to that church, and in the announcements that first day I went, he said, we're going to have new Bible study topic is how to not let bitterness take root in your heart. And I was on Bitterness Boulevard. I was racing down Bitterness Boulevard. I felt justified to be bitter. And I'm like, I'm going to be bitter because I am self-righteous about this. This was wrong, but I went to that Bible study anyway. The Holy Spirit would not let me rest, and I went to the entire 6-week Bible study, and it was for me as much as the Word. And the next time the altar call came, like about 4 weeks into the Bible study, I said, God, I can't do it by myself. And he said, of course you can, and I'm here for you. And he walked me through that. I just ran and jumped in his lap, and he put his arms around me. And I got through it, and I was not bitter. And I was so amazed. I'm always saying, I can't believe God did this, or I can't believe. But I need to start believing because he is as good as his word. And so I stay at this church now. I've been there. That was 2005, so I've been there 14 years. It'll be 14 years in August. I'm the pastor of the children's church. I've been ordained as the pastor. I teach children's church. I teach youth dancing. That's one of the joys of my life. I teach youth praise dancing. And so it has been a good journey. And so I know I am very trusting and very faithful that God is going to help me through the resentments and help me because I do trust him. I trust him with my whole heart. It's just that I'm a human being, and sometimes I have to ask him to help my unbelief. Like Peter, I think it was Peter who said, help my unbelief. Yeah. So that's where I am in my faith walk. And it's still a very strong faith walk. I would hope that the skills I learned in the counseling, in the clinical mental health, will help me in my understanding and help me in being able to be empathetic to the needs of the Christians as they come in and out, as we evangelize and we help people come to Jesus, that I'll be able to use these same skills that God is building in me. So that's my faith walk. Wow. And it was zigzagging all over the place. I'm like, God, where are we going with this? Why am I in the Presbyterian church? But I learned church order. And in the Pentecostal churches, a lot of them have no order. They're very high on spiritual, and they're very, very effective in the spiritual stuff. But they're not good at church business, at running the church as a corporate entity. So I bring that to the table in the Pentecostal church. It's an apostolic church. Yeah. And my pastor actually attended Moody for a while. Mm-hmm. He didn't graduate
conversation with God. And it sounds like you, get a lot of comfort and strength from your relationship with God. Yeah, wow. Something you touched on that I just wanted to talk about briefly was you said that you went to counseling after your
marriage,
after your second marriage. Could you tell me more about that experience?
Well, I was trying to handle it on my own, and I tried winning my husband back, and did all the little silly things that women do, like the whole tight skirts and but that wasn't what it was. And the Holy Spirit quickly revealed to me, so I could take off those too tight shoes and those, so, okay, breathe. And he said, that's not it. He says, you're not paying attention to what I'm trying to show you. You have been giving in that marriage for a long, long time. And I'm a giver. And so it's hard for me not to give. And he says, you need to take back some time for yourself. And I didn't know how. And so I'm going to work every day, and I went into retail therapy. I don't know if you know what that is. But I had never been a shopper. I'm one of these people that makes a list, go in the store, buy what's on my list, get out. I only bought a pair of shoes if I needed a pair of shoes. I mean, my shoes were pretty worn out. One purse until it doesn't zip anymore, or it just hangs off and it's not good. So I went into retail therapy, and that didn't answer it. And so I started talking. I had a great job, and they had what they call an employee assistance program. And I went and talked to someone at the employee assistance program and told them what was going on. And they're like an intake counselor, and they recommended that I actually should go and talk to someone so that I could work through this, because I was having a hard time accepting it. And so I did. I went to counseling. And amazingly, I went into the counseling session, and I was pretty sure this guy couldn't help me. Little, short, white, Jewish guy. I'm like, nope, not going to relate at all. He was phenomenal. He listened to me, just like you're doing. And he didn't judge me. And he helped me realize that my husband's infidelity didn't have anything to do with me. It was his selfishness and his desire to do what he wanted to do. Now, the fact that it all started when his son died wasn't a convenient excuse for him to lose his faith. Because faith is, I'm learning in the trials, in the trials is where your faith is developed and it's strengthened. And anybody can have faith when everything's working. But when stuff breaks down, you got to have faith. You got to trust God then. And so I think God has taken me through some of these trials so that I have a point of reference in whether I ever went into counseling as a profession or not, but I have a point of reference for helping people through spiritual challenges. So I thank him for that. Although I didn't thank him at the time. I'm like, really, God? And so I think that the counseling helped me realize that I am not validated, or my worth doesn't come from this man. And like I said, you know these things intellectually, but when your heart is hurting and emotionally you're tied to what you're going through, your circumstance, it's hard to press past that emotional thing. And like I said, intellectually I knew, because I was a whole person before he came. I was a complete, fully functioning, and so I knew I should be after he goes. And this wasn't the first husband that had chosen something else instead of me. So, I mean, the counseling session did me good, so I knew counseling was a good thing.
Was that, so what got you into, was that what got you into wanting to pursue a graduate degree in counseling?
Well, that happened in 2005, and prior to that I had been talking about going to graduate school to be a faith-based family counselor. And it was like God said, okay, well, let me give you some trials in your family other than the stuff I went through with my teenagers. And so I'm like, when I said I was going to do faith-based counseling, I got the naysayers. Ooh, look at you, 2 divorces. How are you going to tell somebody how families? I said, because I pretty much have been through some stuff. I can tell you how to deal with some stuff. So I did actually start graduate school at Chicago Theological. And I was going for counseling and Christian education. And my mom got sick, and then I had to stop. So, but God said, no, you are not going to Tarsus, you are going to Nineveh. And so he put me back on the right path again. So when my job downsized, and I said, well, what am I going to do? I can go to the new company, the outsourced company, or I can take the package and I can go ahead and do. This would be the second time God had opened this door for me to be able to go to school and get paid for the first year because I got a good severance package. And so God said, I'm not opening this door again, so I jumped. And I applied for Moody in June and was accepted in September and just barely got in time to do an online class. And he says, yes, and I want you to be counseling. God said he wanted me to counsel. And so, because I prayed for patience, and I didn't know at the time I was praying for patience that meant you want some trials. Because trials work with patience. If I had been paying attention to the Bible, to the Word, he says it very clearly. Trials work with patience. But I wanted patience because I was always very impulsive and not a very patient person. I'm not the microwave generation, but I was a microwave person. I wanted everything instantly. Mm-hmm. And so God has showed me how to slow down and get patience.
Yeah, that's amazing. Those are very good things to learn. And I'm sure that he has a plan for you with this degree and where he wants to take you with it. And you touched on it briefly, but I'd love to hear more about what your goals or where you see yourself using this degree.
Well, I love working with children and youth. So when I took the career development class, something resonated with me about how badly the Chicago Public School System counseling programs are. They have a huge caseload, anywhere from 300 to 500 students per counselor, and some schools have to share a counselor. So I figured I would develop some kind of career development counseling program that I could volunteer to come into the Chicago Public Schools and offer this counseling. I mean, starting as young as 7th grade, get them thinking about, because they ask you all the time in school, what do you want to be when you grow up? When 5th grade, what, 3rd, 5th grade? And you say, I want to be a marine biologist. And they go, add a girl. But nobody shows you what that looks like, how to navigate that. So the things I learned in career development counseling, showed me that I could bring a program to the schools that would help them learn that. Instead of just saying that's a good thing and go for it, I could say that's a good thing and here's how we're going to go for it. Bring assessments, bring guest speakers, take them to field trips, and help them visualize themselves in the position where they want to be in their career. So that's where I see myself going.
Wow. That sounds great. It seems like you really have a heart for young people and just wanting to see them get all the resources and helping them to be all that they can be.
Yeah, well, I was blessed, and even though there were not really great counseling programs, I was blessed to have a great counselor who saw potential in me. I hadn't planned to go to college. I had a good job. I was going to work, and I would get my fine apartment and a good car. And, I was just going to be a jet setter, but somebody saw more in me, and they poured into me. So I feel obligated to pour back, to give back. So, like I said, I'm a giver. And so this is a way I can give back. And even though I'm retired, I'm not retired from life. And I also learned in career development that God ordained work, and there's nowhere in the Bible does He ordain retirement. So I intend to work at the work God has given into my hands as long as I can.
That sounds like you have a very big heart and just a desire to give back, as you said. And I think that probably plays into a lot of areas in your life. It sounds like you do that a lot with your family, with your church, in what you want to do next, kind of with your life, next career. Mm-hmm. That's great. I'm excited to learn more about that, hear more about that in the coming weeks, and it probably does play a lot into just your family dynamics right now, and how much you feel the need to give, and the responsibility that you have on your shoulders
Yeah.
with your family and your mom,
Very much so.
because that's part of who you are, and that's part of how you function and,
Yeah.
and live your life, and wanting to give the most that you can. But that's also a really hard
It is.
position.
It's challenging.
Yeah, and it can take a lot out of you if you don't have the right
I need
skills or the right coping mechanisms to help yourself as well, and make sure that you're giving to yourself, and are making sure you're in the best position to be able to give to people,
Yes.
without it burning you out or feeling.
That's exactly why I'm here.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful. So we'll definitely have more time in the coming weeks to talk more about this. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again next week.
Well, thank you so much.
All right.
You have a great day.
You too, Deborah.
So your screen went black, so that kind of... Okay. Is it still recording?
Is the red bar still down there?
No, the screen is just totally black.
Did the battery go?
I don't know if...
Oh, no, yeah.
It's still going?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, Dr. Gordon, if you're viewing this, sorry about that technical difficulty. But so yeah, from what I observed, it was very, very good. What I noticed was, well, I guess I'll just highlight it right away. One thing that I've noticed was your presence and her constant eye contact throughout the whole thing. She asked very few questions, which is actually a good thing. You definitely, and I, like Deborah, you mentioned it in her session, you felt the presence that she was there. And I felt that too coming off of you, which is a very, very good thing. And I also liked how you always started your questions with a how, what, and when. Always like asking open-ended questions. And I did really like at the end how you also how she validated the challenges that Deborah was experiencing in her life. Not saying like, oh, like it'll be fine, like, you know, you'll get through this, but kind of just like affirming the stress, you know. And you could see it with Deborah just feeling like, you know, you could tell some of the stress being lifted off. So yeah, it was overall pretty good. Other than that, yeah, I think it's all right. So yeah.